Hello, my name is David Brett. I'm the editor of the New Westminster Times. I'm coming to you again from the site of the AMEBC 2026 Roundup, the big mining conference and exploration conference here that has had some bombshell news. So we're on day 3 of the conference today, and I'd like to update folks and provide a report on the goings-on here and the state of play in the mining industry in British Columbia. Earlier this week, bombshell news came out about an agreement between the Tahltan First Nation and a company called Skeena Resources related to a gold project called Eskay Creek. So this is touted to be the first agreement under the UNDRIP rules. And if it's any indication of the shape of things to come, the province of BC is in big trouble. Just to give you a sense of it, the agreement, and these are rough figures, pretends to have benefits flowing to the Tahltan First Nation of approximately $1.7 billion over the life of the mine. $1.2 billion of that in direct cash payments to the band. Plus, there's another part of the agreement that some people feel is somewhat peculiar, and that is that $40 million was paid up front to compensate members of the band $10,000 cash each. So imagine if you have a couple, that's $20,000. If you have a household of qualifying people of 5, that's possibly up to $50,000. So this has got people concerned about this sort of unseemly nature of this upfront payment. Was this kind of to grease the wheel to get the deal over the line? So I'd like to talk about that in some detail. And also, I'm going to talk about a presentation this morning by Chief Rosanne Casimir, the chief of the Kamloops First Nation. And she discussed in detail that nation's land claim that covers the entirety of the city of Kamloops, a city of over 100,000 people. And it was quite incredible, the things she was saying and the demands that were being made, and how she was talking in these sort of general terms of quote-unquote 50-50 or half and half, 50% revenue sharing. These kind of phrases were being thrown out as kind of a indication of what they're looking for in their land claim. So first, back to the UNDRIP Skeena deal. So the public, I don't think, fully understands or appreciates the dynamics of what's going on. It's certainly not the talking points of the deadbeat EV NDP government. The way that these agreements are couched is as quote-unquote partnerships. But what is the basis of the partnership? Let's talk about the Eskay Creek mine. It's a historic mine that was found originally in the 1980s, and it went into production, and it ran out of ore, but they discovered more. So this mine was developed to its stage now under the old rules, with the goalposts way over here. Now suddenly we have the price of gold at historic highs, and this sudden availability of money. Well, isn't it convenient that the price of entry to get a permit approved has gone up so dramatically while the gold price is going up? So just to give people a sense of how it works. So the government of British Columbia is in charge of providing environmental permits for a mine to go ahead. However, the government will say, well, we won't give you the permit unless we have quote-unquote social license to do so. In other words, if we don't have the consent of the First Nation, the said permit won't go ahead. So you have effectively a double hammer. You have the First Nation coming at the company, then you have the government saying we're going to back them up. So here's the other conundrum that doesn't really fully add up. The question is, what lands are these mines on in the first place? They're not on Indigenous Aboriginal title lands. They are on Crown lands, lands that are owned by the Crown. Though many of these Crown lands are subject to what are considered to be territorial claims. So the recent Cowichan decision is a decision of constitutional law relating to what is called Aboriginal title. If you look at that decision, and it's been much discussed, it took 10 years of litigation for the Cowichan to establish an Aboriginal title over 1,800 acres, a very small area. And the level of evidence required for them to convince the judge that they had a village there and had continuously... So there's this misconception that all of BC is subject to quote-unquote Aboriginal title. It is not. In the mining industry, it's understood that there's different types of Indigenous land. There's the reserve lands. There's potentially title lands that they may be able to go to court to get and have established by the court. Then there's treaty lands. Then there's what are called traditional territories. So the traditional territories can be incredibly vast swaths of land, and those traditional territories typically overlap with other First Nations. A mining company could potentially be required to consult with up to 3, 4, 5, 6 or more First Nations in obtaining a simple exploration permit. So the Tahltan traditional territory is not, quote, land that they own. So you have now a dynamic where the BC NDP and its UNDRIP plan in one hand and its apparent desire to hand a veto over to First Nations are putting the companies in a position which is known in economics as hold-up. It's a hold-up situation where you cannot go forward unless you get over this hurdle. So the hurdle, the companies really have no choice. If you look at what happened with the New Prosperity mine, I've talked about that, it's one of the largest mines in Canada. Certainly it's a vast multi-billion-dollar mine. It is now sitting in the ground, and the entire project is completely subject to the Chilcotin First Nations veto. And the government handed them 25% of it approximately, and cut a check to Taseko Mines for $75 million. So you can see where this is going. So what about the next big mine that comes along? Now we have a precedent with the Tahltan. $1.7 billion in total aggregate benefits. $1.2 billion in direct payments of cash. $40 million up front, 10 grand a pop for each member. Well, who has that kind of money? The only people that have that kind of money are the mega multinationals or the extremely high capitalized companies. This conference, the AMEBC, the BC Yukon Chamber of Mines Conference, is about quote-unquote prospectors and junior companies that are struggling to pay the rent. They've got salaries, they've got geologists, they've got contractors, they've got lawyers, they've got bills to pay. They may be able to afford, $500,000, $1 million just to do the program. How are they going to afford these vast and enormous payments? So, how does that connect to the Kamloops situation with Rosanne Casimir's comments this morning? So this morning there was an annual event called the Reconciliation Breakfast. So the keynote speaker was Rosanne Casimir, the chief of the Kamloops First Nation, and She spoke for about 52 minutes, and what she said should provide sort of a foreshadowing of things to come, because she gave a big shout out to the Tahltan who had signed this big agreement. So what is evident in her rather demanding talk was that the Tahltan agreement and these other precedents that the BC NDP is setting is emboldening her and their nation to now expect similar treatment, and not only that, much more. So the presentation by Casimir was very detailed, and it provided a lot of maps. And not only is the city of Kamloops, the entire city, the subject of the claim, but it's also, there's the new Afton mine. And she kept referring to the Highland Valley copper mine. She says, well, that's not inside our territory, but it's sort of encroaching, as if now they're trying to leverage their way into that massive multi-billion-dollar copper mine, one of the largest copper mines in the world, and the subject of a multi-billion-dollar expansion. So the tenor of the talk was, well, you know, if you have any claims on our lands, well, make sure you come and talk to us, and you know, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. We'll get through this. It was a rather, frankly, patronizing kind of tone, speaking to the members of the exploration industry. She's talking about, yeah, you guys are, you know, entrepreneurs, and wow, you know, you've really risked a lot, but we're risking a lot too, so let's all risk together. But meanwhile, the underlying message is, we have the hammer. We're going to use DRIPA to extract, and we put out another video, if you see it on YouTube, about her talking about this expression, half and half, and 50% revenue sharing. So earlier in the talk, she talked about a proclamation that was made by their nation to Sir Wilfrid Laurier over 100 years ago. And it was sort of setting out general terms where they thought, well, this would be a fair deal for you to come into our territory. And they mentioned this sort of half. You can have half, and we'll have half. But this 50-50 idea sets up a rather a false dichotomy, a sort of false equivalence, if you will. It's a bit of a fallacy, because the question is 50% of what exactly? 50% of undeveloped land? See, land is only one part of the economic equation. The other part is, well, if there's no settlement of those lands, there's no industry upon those lands, there's no discovery of minerals, there's no investment in mining, then the value of the land in economic terms is not the same as bare land. So Wilfrid Laurier, Prime Minister of Canada, never agreed to anything, apparently, she said. That's what she said. But now they're going to assert that this 50-50 deal should be the basis of everything going forward. So it was just being in the room when this was said, and it was quite a large room of people. And I have to say something on an aside. Folks in the mining industry are very polite. No one sort of guffawed. There's no loud complaining about First Nations at this conference. In fact, it's like the red carpet is rolled out for them wherever they go. And shouldn't it be that way? Shouldn't we have this kind and compassionate and kind of heartfelt agreement and connection to First Nations people? After all, they're right. The Europeans are recently come here. They've been here for thousands of years. this mutual respect, so this word respect is constantly used, and she, Casimir, used this word respect. However, where's the respect when you're laying claim to an entire city and then saying, well, we only want half? And she kind of made a sideways comment that this would be, we want only half, not the entire thing. So, in summary, it's not a beautiful sunny day here in Vancouver. It's raining, but there's one more day to this conference, and again, I said this before, the elephant in the room is that all the First Nations folks, they're talking about the environment, they're talking about critical minerals. Like, this is the environmentally acceptable thing to talk about here at this conference. Nobody's talking about gold, which is hitting all-time highs, over $5,400 US per ounce. As of today, up over $200. And this Eskay mine, it's not a critical minerals mine, it's a gold mine. And this is where all the huge wealth is being generated. So, I'll leave you with this. Don't believe the talking points of the government. Don't believe what you're reading in the mainstream media. Don't just accept this kind of positioning of these things as they're presented. There's a lot more to it. And if this conference is underscoring anything, it's that the sort of activist kind of revolution, if you will, the revolutionary activist narrative, and this playbook of kind of transferring wealth from corporations and taxpayers and the public out of their pocketbooks to someone else. Now, who are the someone else? There's an argument to be made that Indigenous people deserve to benefit. And that's never been the position of the mining industry, in my experience, that somehow Indigenous people should not benefit. I think there are some people, you know, extreme people out there, but they're very much in the minority. But this is something other. This is going to block the development of this kind of grand plans to unbury BC from its economic problems through mining. It's like slamming the door in your own face. I think the NDP is hoping the public doesn't catch on to what they're doing, but hopefully you will. My name's David Brett, and I'm the editor of the New Westminster Times. If you enjoy our journalism, I invite you to support us. On our website, newwesttimes.com, there's a little button up in the corner. It says support our work. It's right up there if you feel so inclined. We do have costs, so if you have, if you're inclined, please feel free to support us. So until next time, I thank you for watching.